Welcome back to Talk of the Town on 99.7, 1450 WHTC and WHTC.com.
And we welcome you back to WHTC's Talk of the Town for this Thursday, June the 4th. I'm Gary Stevens. Open line tomorrow. We'll have Wellspring from Spectrum Health Zeeland Community Hospital following the 11 o'clock news break. But on this first Thursday of the month, our 10:30 segment is normally set aside for a conversation with Allegan County Sheriff Frank Baker. He is on the other end of our Zoom connection, and he joins us now. Frank, good morning, and welcome back to Talk of the Town.
Good morning, Gary. How are you today?
We are well. Hopefully you are as well. And, of course, if you wish to join in the conversation, you may certainly do so at 395-1450, 395-1450. Timing, unfortunately, Frank, is everything, and you're the first law enforcement officer we've had the chance to chat with since the death of George Floyd, and certainly law enforcement leaders such as yourself and others nationwide have to be aware of heightened tensions. Heightened passions, I think, is a better way I'd like to use that term, involving this, and your first thoughts about dealing with this situation right now. Another black eye in police community relations nationwide.
Yeah, it's really tragic and unfortunate event. And like you say, when something like this happens, it doesn't have to be in our community, but our community is impacted by that. And it's truly a tragedy, and obviously our heart goes out to their family and during these very troubling times, and we'll do our best to deal with that. We obviously greatly appreciate the support that we get from our community, and we hopefully are never in a position where we do anything to jeopardize that, and we try to be as transparent as we can to be a part of the community and welcome all their input so that we can work together. I'm a true believer that for a police agency to be successful, they've got to be a part of the community, and they have to have the community support. So obviously these are troubling times right now.
Peg has a question for us. Go ahead, Peg.
Real quickly, one of the questions we're asking police officers and leaders is what sort of diversity training that do you have now that you didn't have, say, 5 years ago, and how has de-escalation training changed or been implemented?
Yeah, it's one of those things that has come to light that maybe there are things that we can do better. We're always looking for new programs that we can utilize, but our training does include that. Our policies include things regarding how we interact with people, and it's always on our forefront. It's one of the things that we've actively gone out and tried to recruit people because we want to be more diverse. One of my goals is to make the sheriff's office more diverse. And while we have been successful in some ways, also we're at the point where some of our staff is retired. So it's always an ongoing issue and something we're always looking to try to improve. How
are you looking at recruiting so that you can meet those diversity goals?
One of the things that we do is we actually go out to the police academies and meet with individuals there so that hopefully we get an opportunity to talk to them about the opportunities at the sheriff's office. And we think if we can get to candidates early enough and introduce them to what we have to offer, hopefully we can be a success as far as recruiting them to be members of our agency.
And how do you track officers who make mistakes or in unintentionally or unintentional mistakes where they cross lines? How do you track that, and how do you hold them accountable?
We have a rather robust way of dealing with any types of complaints like that. We end up, when we get a citizen complaint, it's first handled by that officer's sergeant, see if it's resolved. If it's not, then that is forwarded up through the chain of command. We have an internal investigation done on those types of complaints should they occur. That internal investigation is done by someone who's a trained investigator. If it's something that looks like it's more of an internal policy issue, if it's something that we believe could be criminal in nature, we have an outside agency participate in that through the Michigan Sheriff's Association. We have a group of trained investigators that come in from areas from different parts of the state so that there is no chance of a conflict of interest with them knowing any of the individuals involved. They conduct an investigation. Like I say, whether it's an internal one for a policy or if it's criminal, then that comes to the command staff. We then set up what we call as a hearing board. That board is comprised of sergeants and lieutenants and captains that are not within the division that employee works. So again, we're trying to remove those conflicts of interest. Then that board then hears the complaint, here's the information, reviews the evidence, and then they make a recommendation that goes to the undersheriff. The undersheriff then either concurs with that finding, or he would come to me with reasons that he felt that we shouldn't follow the findings of the board. So we have a lot of layers in place so that we make sure that we have a fair and impartial investigation and we can get to the truth. We think that it's essential, and we feel we've been successful in doing that.
A couple of other things I wanted to add to when you mentioned about recruiting and trying to add diversity. Is there a residency requirement for deputies to be living in the county?
No, there's not. Several years back, I think it became part of labor law that you could not have those types of requirements. We encourage our hires to move into the county if they don't. There are some incentives to be a part of the community. I think, again, that in order to provide the policing that you want, you need to be a part of that community. So we encourage people to move into the county if they're from the outside, but we don't require it.
Yeah, that certainly was a factor. That why I was born and raised in the city of Detroit is because at the time, Detroit police officers had to live within the city limits, and my dad obeyed the law. If he was supposed to swear to protect it, got to obey the law too. Some of his colleagues, unfortunately, did not, but that's past, that's 50 some years ago. The other question I wanted to ask you specifically, Frank Baker, is what words did you tell your deputies and those who work under you in the days after the George Floyd incident, when really tensions were going to be raised again against those in your department, in terms of those in Brown, against the law, against the man, based on, over the years, we've had various run-ins with the law nationwide.
Yeah, and I don't think there's anything specific to this incident. I think overall there's a culture that we've adopted, and it comes from the top down. That we strive to treat everyone equally, and we have to be especially conscious of these concerns that people do have, and we try to make sure that we're not doing anything to potentially cause something to be misconstrued or to erupt. And obviously, by no means do we condone any type of behavior that would be in the form of uses of force that are not appropriate. So it's basically a cultural thing. I think we strive and work hard to try to maintain the proper culture that I want to see, and that our command officers want to see with our staff.
395-1450. If you have a question for Allegan County Sheriff Frank Baker, he'll be happy to answer it at 395-1450. Along the lines of what we're dealing with right now, Frank, some of your colleagues, and I want to say colleagues, some other sheriffs have stepped up and joined in some of these demonstrations, most notably the Genesee County Sheriff in Flint in this state, but others as well. Is that a little bit of a reach in this situation where you're sworn to protect the law, but stepping in with them sometimes might be, crossing a line a little bit?
I think, like you say, I think it's how it's handled, how it's taking place. I know I've been invited to say a few words at an event coming up here in the near future, and I've agreed to do that. I think as long as those events are peaceful in nature and their purpose is appropriate, I think that's fine. It's like you say, when you end up with situations like unfortunately occurred in Grand Rapids and Kalamazoo the other day, then obviously that's where it's not appropriate. So I think if we could be a part of to the solution and a part of assisting to make sure that some of those things don't happen and we can work together to collaborate, I'm certainly in support of that.
Speaking about the situations in Kalamazoo in Grand Rapids, there have been some reports that perhaps some of the issues that cropped up there were spurred by people who are looking to take advantage of the situation, ambitious people from outside the area, without disclosing maybe some confidential stuff that needs to stay behind closed doors. Are you and other law enforcement leaders briefed? Say, for example, there is a known demonstration, and you might get an alert saying, "Hey, we might have a group coming in from out of state." Do you guys do leaders do get those briefings in that regard?
Yes, we do. We work with the state police and organizations that provide us with that type of information, and it's something that we're always looking at.
Yeah, just sort of an alert there. Let's get to the phones real quick. 395-1450 if you have a question for Allegan County Sheriff Frank Baker. Good morning. You're on the line with Sheriff Baker.
Hi, Sheriff Baker. Thank you for your service to the communities that you live in. And it's unfortunate that all law enforcement officers are being painted with a broad brush and stereotyped as racist, even though the great majority of police have always been loving and helpful toward minorities. And now they are being blamed for the action of one white criminal cop.
Frank?
Yeah, and I think it's, it's part of the reality that obviously this wasn't just one incident that caused this to happen. It's been something that's happened over many years and decades, and we're obviously want to be a part of the solution. We want to be able to be helpful in responding to these concerns, and it's a troubling time. And like I say, I wish I had every answer that we needed to fix this. But I think it all begins with collaboration, working together, and building trust. And that's one of the things that we've strived to do, is build trust within all the communities in the county, so that we don't find ourselves painted with that broad brush.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for the call. 395-1450, 395-1450 if you have a question for Allegan County Sheriff Frank Baker. I'm going to ask you a question, Frank, that frankly you might not be able to answer. And it might not be in your purveyance to do so as a law enforcement officer. But I'm going to ask it anyway, and you can say, well, I can't talk about that. But it's a question involving the justice system. The video of the situation involving George Floyd has gone viral. It's worldwide. There's protests worldwide about this. Do you get a sense that for those who are accused of what has happened, they can't get a fair trial because of the fact that to have a jury of your peers judge on the evidence presented at trial, they've seen this video or have knowledge of the video or have been exposed to people talking about it, it becomes a dicey situation. Again, might be a better question for the prosecutors, but or judge, but in this situation, I kind of wonder whether or not if those who are accused can get a fair trial, if not in Minneapolis, in the entire state of Minnesota, or maybe elsewhere in the world.
Yeah, it's one of those things that, I don't not necessarily want to speak to this specific incident, but one of the things that, we try to do is we try to limit pre-trial publicity, because defendants have the right to a fair trial, and we believe that. And so a lot of times in the news, we don't share everything we know, because as a law enforcement agency, our prosecutor would not be very happy with us if all of our evidence was laid out in the media. So that's why oftentimes you'll hear when we're interviewed make comments to the fact that it's still under investigation. That information we're not able to provide to you at this time. We have a lot of standard comments that we make, that we may have more information that we can release. But in the day and age we live in, we live in an era of technology, and information is readily available. And I think it's just one of those things that we're going to have to figure out how to navigate as technology has expanded the ability of people to readily and immediately put information like that out into the public.
One of the related question, and it's again a general question, not specifically to George Floyd, but one aspect of what we see in crime and courtroom dramas over the years has been an adversarial situation involving a prosecutor and the defense, where the defense says we can't get the information. The classic Perry Mason line. Can you get to this witness? No, Berger's got him under wraps, or Lieutenant Tragg's got him under wraps. Is that really a case right now where law enforcement might want to keep some evidence behind and then surprise the prosecution in a criminal trial anymore?
No, that would be something that if my agency was to do that, I would be on the hot seat myself. One of the things we're obligated to do by law is provide all the information we have so that someone can present a proper defense. So if there's ever any concern or question, there's things they call motions for discovery, so that the defense can have access to and basically discover what evidence we have. And it's an appropriate rule, and we would be in jeopardy of jeopardizing a case or having a case overturned if we were not to follow that. So it's something that we're very conscious of. We're always very willing to share what evidence we have with the defense. In fact, we make special arrangements to have them come in and have their own experts look at evidence that we have their own experts test evidence that we have. We make it a point to make that as available as we possibly can, just for that reason, because it's not fair. It's not fair to someone who's accused to be put in that position, and we wouldn't want to be the ones to be trying to do something like that is obviously wrong.
That's been something I've been meaning to ask those either in law enforcement, such as yourself, or perhaps our prosecutors or our judges. Again, a dramatic device in these crime dramas, and certainly appreciate you sharing that with us.
Yeah, it makes for good TV, but it doesn't make for real good courtroom drama, because it would definitely be an issue.
Frank, we spent most of our time so far talking about the George Floyd situation and community police relations. Certainly a big concern there, but another concern right now is what we're going through in terms of today being, the day that some of the stay home, stay safe regulations get peeled back a little bit, and that I would think off the top of my head, Frank, it would certainly be a little bit of a, hey, we get one less thing we have to put on our plate.
Oh, for sure. The ability for some of our businesses to get back open, and for some of our recreational opportunities and entertainment opportunities to get back into full swing couldn't come soon enough. And obviously we did our part, we feel, and we did a great job. I was very proud of our community and all the efforts they took to flatten that curve. And right now we're just excited about the chance that we can kind of get back to a little bit of normalcy in our lives, as far as back to work, restaurants being open. And I think hopefully some of the tensions that everyone's been feeling will hopefully start to go away a little bit.
Now, the thing is, though, Frank, is the fact is going back to some sense of normalcy. A sense of normalcy is summer solstice is coming up. Summer weather. We've had nice, warm Memorial Day weekend, another nice weekend up ahead. And that means some of the safety concerns, not only on the roadways, but the waterways. And the Sheriff's Department's going to have to be concerned about that.
Yep. In fact, I invited Sergeant Todd Wagner to say a few words, because right now, obviously, we're experiencing some high water situations. And I just wanted him to be able to say a little bit about that and maybe answer some questions that we seem to be getting a lot of questions regarding the high water. And he's with us here. So I'll let you talk to him for a minute.
We got about a minute left to go on this edition of WHTC's Talk of the Town. Todd, again, thank you very much for joining us this morning. And, I can't say enough about the high water situation, most notably in our area. You take a look at Kalamazoo Lake and the Kalamazoo River around Saugatuck, but even along Lake Michigan, the high water's got to be a big concern.
It is. We've had a lot of issues just because of the high water. With the boat traffic causing wakes, which then that water goes over the seawalls or water breaks, and causes flooding and other problems for both residents and businesses along Kalamazoo River there in Saugatuck. And unfortunately, there's nothing that the Sheriff's Department can do about the high water, but we can diligently work on enforcing a slow and awake ordinance that they do currently have in place, and making sure boaters are educated that travel at the slowest speed possible to create the minimum amount of wake.
And that was the point I was going to make, because there was some discussion up in Holland about Lake Makatawa and the temporary no wake for the entire year. Is that the same situation down in Saugatuck?
Well, we do have permanent watercraft controls in place all the way from the pier heads up into where the Kalamazoo River turns into the Kalamazoo Lake. The lake itself currently has no restrictions on it. However, it does then pick back up at the Blue Star Bridge. Now, the state legislature has authorized this year new legislation for a temporary watercraft control. However, it can be a little bit of a lengthy process to get that in place, and it's only good for 14 days. It is renewable for an additional 14 days, but again, we have to, between us, the DNR, and the local body of government has to prove that it's an ongoing issue and it needs to be renewed. So there are measures that local units of government can look for to help relieve some of those issues. That is available to them, and then we can work with them if they choose to do so.
Todd, along with Sheriff Frank Baker, I want to thank both of you very much for joining us today on WHTC's Talk of the Town program. And we'll talk more about water safety next month, as our chat will be just before the 4th of July. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you, Gary.
Thank you very much. That is Allegan County Sheriff Frank Baker on 99.7 and 1450 WHTC. Coming up, it's CBS News with Steve Cathan, WHTC News with Peg McNichol, and then Wellspring from Spectrum Health Zealand Community Hospital on 99.7 and 1450 WHTC.